Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for another Stay at Home lecture. I'm Suzanne Easley, Assistant Director and Archivist in the UAMS Historical Research Center. Excuse me. The Historical Research Center is the archives division of the UAMS Library and is the only archives in the state whose main collecting focus is on the health sciences. We preserve the institutional records of UAMS as well as materials related to the history of health sciences in Arkansas. The Stay at Home lecture series is sponsored by the Society for the History of Medicine and the Health Professions, which is the Friends group for the Historical Research Center. The Society supports the center in many ways, including the purchase of books and archival materials for our collections and by sponsoring events and programs such as this series. We welcome new members in the Society, and you can sign up on your website using the URL shown on your screen. You can also pay for your membership directly using the links to PayPal or Venmo shown here. Dues are inexpensive, starting at $15 for an individual membership or $5 for a student membership. So, a few reminders about today's presentation. It will be recorded and uploaded to the Society's YouTube channel in a couple of weeks. Please mute your audio and video during the presentation. To ask questions, use the chat feature, and Dr. Pruitt will be happy to answer them after the presentation is over. Okay. The next presentation in the Stay at Home series will be April 3rd from noon to 1. Our presenter next month will be Tim Nutt, Director of the Historical Research Center, and he'll be discussing the Kirby family of physicians from Harrison, Arkansas. Our speaker today is Dr. Taylor Pruitt of Fort Smith, Arkansas. Dr. Pruitt earned his BA in English from the University of Arkansas and his medical degree from Washington University. Specializing in cardiology, Dr. Pruitt trained at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and completed a fellowship at Brompton Hospital in London, England. He practiced at the Cooper Clinic from 1969 to 2003 and served on the boards of St. Edward Mercy Hospital and Methodist Village Senior Living, all located in Fort Smith. He is the author of the book, Before It Got Complicated, Medicine in Fort Smith and the Arkansas River Valley, 1817 to 1975. And Dr. Pruitt's presentation today is Roger Bost, Arkansas's pediatrician, 90% backbone. So, Dr. Pruitt, I've stopped sharing my slides, so I'll hand it over to you, and if you will share your screen, we'll get started.
Okay. Okay.
We can see it.
Okay. I have a great big black box in the middle of my slide that I'll need to take out some way. Okay, here we go. Okay, how we're doing?
We can see it. Can you see yours?
Can you see my slide?
Yes, perfect.
Oh, okay, we're in business.
All right.
Thank you very much. I appreciate all of you pitching in and joining us today. Especially thank Virginia Berner, who is the daughter of Roger Bost, for joining us and for helping with a good bit of this, which I'll call on Virginia as we go along. I would like to discuss Dr. Roger Bost, who served as a pediatrician in Fort Smith. I'll get into his career, and had a distinguished career at the University of Arkansas medical school, and also in the Department of Health. We'll get to that. Let's see. Yeah, Virginia, this is one of my favorite pictures of your dad. I like this one. It's hanging, I think, in the Bost Inc. headquarters.
I love that picture.
Yeah, that's a very nice picture. Dr. Bost practiced pediatrics in Fort Smith for a decade from 1954 to 1965. John Watts was his partner for the last 3 or 4 years before he moved. And one of the things I think it was John said was his shoes aren't very big, but he sure left a big footprint. Um, uh, Virginia, he must have been pretty young when this one was taken. Do you have any idea?
Well, you may think he looks bald in that picture, but it impresses me with how much hair he had. Yes, I would guess that was about 1960. Um,
Yeah, during the middle of his time in Fort Smith, probably.
mhm.
Okay,
Because he told me that he was president 2 different years while he was on the school board. So just backtracking, I think that that was somewhere in that period.
right. Okay, well, the story is, and with all of this, Virginia, if you have comments or corrections and whatnot, pitch in. I'll just present the story as I got it. Um, that he told his partner John Watts he wanted to run for the school board because the superintendent wouldn't allow children with disabilities to enroll in school. So therefore, Dr. Bost decided he would run for the school board. And he was elected, and 2 years later, he was elected president of the school board. And so, in that fashion, Fort Smith became the first school in the state to allow children with learning disabilities to enroll and participate in special education classrooms.
Now, it just seems impossible that we did not allow all children to attend public school. But at that time, those parents had no means to educate their children, and they were generally, they stayed home. You didn't see those children out in the community. Um, and those parents, Daddy talks about how desperate they were. And so he went to the superintendent, and the superintendent was pretty alarmingly negative about the idea. And so Daddy thought, okay, I'll just go at it from another direction.
Right. Okay. Now, let's see. I've hit a glitch. Oh, here we go. Um, well, Dr. Bose's background is that his great great grandfather, um, Captain John Bost, sailed across the ocean 5 times in 1620. Now, this was very early. It's just interesting that the Bost family got started in America before Plymouth Rock, which was 1621, as you remember from history. And then 2 centuries later, the family settled in Arkansas, coming from Hickory, North Carolina. And 1820 in Arkansas, Arkansas was just getting started because we didn't become a state until 1836. So it's interesting that the Bost family were pioneers both in Virginia and in Arkansas. And they settled in the Arkansas River Valley in Clarksville. And it was 100 years later, in 1921, that Dr. Bost was born. His father had graduated from the University of Arkansas pharmacy department and opened a drugstore in Mulberry. And then 9 years later, he moved to the courthouse square in Clarksville.
Maybe a couple of additional things. I'd say his mother's father was in the Oklahoma land run. So
Ah,
she grew up in a sod house in western Oklahoma, close to the town of Fairview. And another thing I would add is that my dad was born and raised in Clarksville. At that time, the School of Pharmacy was at the College of the Ozarks, which is now University of the Ozarks. And it did not move to Little Rock until 1950 or 60. And my father shared a framed picture with all the graduates of my grandfather's class in it, and that is at the UAMS archive.
Oh, okay. Well, that's very good. Well, Dr. Bost said that he worked in the drugstore himself as a young man. He says, I remember jerking sodas there, running errands, and all kinds of sordid tasks growing up. Then we'd close up late at night and walk home. And he said everything I ever knew about the pharmacy or about life began working in that old store. So that must have been a formative experience in his young days.
In addition to that, upstairs from the pharmacy was Dr. Earl Hunt, just a country physician, and he would call Daddy up all the time if there was something interesting or something he needed help with. And Daddy had lots and lots of stories about Dr. Earl Hunt. One time, Dr. Hunt called him up, and there was this really sick man, and Daddy helped him. The stairs were outside the building, steep stairs, and Dr. Hunt and Daddy got this man to his car, and he drove off, and Dr. Hunt said, so let that be a lesson to you, Roger. And Daddy said, what's that? And he said, never let a patient die in your office. Which is an awful story, but there were lots of stories like that from
Oh, that's
Dr.
pretty
Hunt.
good. That's pretty good. Um, well, Dr. Bost attended the University of Arkansas as an undergraduate, and then he transferred to the College of Ozarks. Now, Virginia, was that because your mother was a student at the College of the Ozarks then?
Well, actually, they got together a little bit later than that. Daddy was dating Mother's best friend, Florence, so at that time, but he did not graduate from college. At that time, they needed them to get to medical school as quickly as possible because of the war. And so he was in college 3 years, and then medical school was 12 months a year. So he graduated medical school in 3 years.
Okay, okay. Um, well, everybody, every doctor went um, into the service then. That was this war was coming to an end, and he served in Corpus Christi, Texas, and then after the war was transferred to the VA in Fayetteville. And upon completing there, he did a pediatric residency at Duke, and then joined the faculty at Duke in Durham, North Carolina, in pediatrics. Um, and then in 1951, he um, moved to New Orleans, where he was associate professor of pediatrics in Tulane, and was on the staff of Ochsner Clinic and Charity Hospital. And it was during this time that he had a gastrectomy for a gastric ulcer. And this may or may not have had to do with his remaining pretty skinny thereafter. Virginia, you have any comments on all of this?
Whenever you got in Daddy's car, you had to check the seat because there might be a half-eaten peanut butter cracker or an apple core. And he got a nickname of Roger the Apple Core because he
Oh,
always had apples with him. He couldn't eat much at any one time because of the Bill Roth 2 procedure that he had. And so he just tried to eat frequently.
right. Well, he lived to be 92, I believe. So I can't think that the slender build hurt him any in his longevity.
No.
He, he did very well for many years. Um, John Watts says that Bud Downs persuaded him to come to Fort Smith. Bud Downs was a urologist. He was at Cooper Clinic, and I actually used his former clinic, Bud Downs' former clinic office myself. And the convenience of it was, well, this is kind of unrelated, but the convenience of that office was it had a urinal in it. But in any event, um, Bud Downs got credit for coming to Fort Smith. Um, there had been a pediatrician at Holt Crock named Dr. Pearl Waddell since 1932, and she was just on the point of retiring and moving to uh, one of the offshore islands in Georgia. And so Dr. Bost found himself busy from day one. Took months to get around to even unpacking his books. Um, the wife was making hospital rounds twice a day, making a lot of house calls. And one of the legendary stories is that somebody called him because a cat was up in a tree. And he went up and the cat was way out on a limb. And so he got the cat down, and that accomplished that. Also, he and John Watts delivered oral polio vaccine from house to house. Um, Virginia, you have any comments about the time in Fort Smith or being the doctor's daughter there?
Well, everybody knew me because of my dad. And at the first day of school, the teacher would ask everyone who your doctor was. And I can remember the entire class, except for maybe one person, would all say my dad. And I didn't think a thing of it. But here he was trying to recover from, I mean, in New Orleans, there was a period of time that he was not expected to live. And to go from that to jumping into what he accomplished there in 11 years or so, it's pretty amazing. I know one time the police came by and got Daddy because Big Jim had his family at gunpoint, and Big Jim would only talk to Daddy. And so Daddy went to their house. It was late at night, and went inside the house and got Big Jim to let the family go. He just had a very diverse practice, and there was some danger involved. I know somebody broke into the office one night when he was still there and knocked him out to get drugs, and he worked long hours, 7 days a week.
Yeah. This photograph of his office, it was built by Calvin Schreiber. And while I was making a presentation about this to a women's group about a year ago, a woman came up afterwards and told me that I think she was a daughter-in-law of Calvin Schreiber, who had invented or who designed and built this office. Um, see if I can. Well, one of the descriptions was that it had a unique butterfly floor and Taliesin West inspired structural members, creating an eye-catching design that would stand out in any city. The use of large spans of clear story windows around the building allowed ample light in all the exam rooms, but also provided maximum privacy for the patients. So it was a striking architectural design. Actually, I think John Watts didn't really like it all that much because I think for whatever reason, I think he went ahead and built a different office after Dr. Bost moved.
Okay.
But he did have Dr. Watts did have one single waiting room for blacks and whites. This was unusual, certainly at that time. Dr. Goldstein at Cooper Clinic also had a single waiting room for blacks and whites. Dr. Goldstein.
And I was not even aware when Daddy did that he had, I was not aware until later, and didn't recognize as a child that took any gumption. But my mother passed away this summer. She was 4 days away from being 103, and we had moved her to Presbyterian Village a few years earlier. And lo and behold, one of the first people to come to help her was a mother, a Black woman who had taken her children to Daddy in Fort Smith and talked about being able to be in that waiting room and the advice that Daddy helped her with. And she was Mother's devoted caregiver that entire time then, once Mother was there. So this blessing came from that Daddy didn't realize the gift that he gave to Mother later in life when she was vulnerable.
Oh, that's really something. On one occasion, Dr. Bost had a patient needed to be admitted to the hospital, and he knew that Sparks was not accepting Black patients, but he called and told him he wanted the patient admitted, and they said no, and he kept making phone calls, got all the way up to the chairman of the board of Sparks, who refused, and he just simply told him that you'll live to regret that. Um, and you know, the integration of the hospitals actually came not too very long after that, I think, but uh, it was just it took a bit of fight by people like Dr. Bost, who were willing to fight for it.
These
Oh,
problems are hard to understand. You
you'll
know,
have to explain this one. I don't know what color his Carmen Gia was.
well, I hate to say this, but actually Daddy drove black Volvos. Um, and they were, he would get a new one every year and they were identical, and we never knew when he got a new one. But it was black, and it was just a heavy car. I don't know why he was attracted to them, but
Well, one of the things he was quoted as saying was he spent so much time, more time in the car making calls than he did anywhere
yes,
else. So
yes.
indulged himself on that. Um, Dr. Bost very early became active in the community in ways of providing um, facilities for children who needed help. And one of the things was with the foundation of what became to be known as the um, uh, Bost Inc. Um, and one of the stories that was told was that he went up and down Garrison Avenue from store to store, getting soliciting donations and getting money to build what was called the Child Family Guidance Center and the School for Limited Children. And this started out with 6 children in a house that was used by the Methodist Church as for Sunday school rooms. Um, and Dr. Bost later gave credit to the Junior Civic League for uh, raising and donating money for the purpose, saying that those ladies uh, really pitched in. Um, let's see. Oh yeah, that's a picture of
Oh, yeah.
Ken Jones, who was in charge of the Bost Center for some years with your mom and dad, Virginia. And again, I don't know the year of this. Do you have any idea when that might have
I
been?
would guess that was about 2000. That would just be a guess, but just based on how they looked there. And Mother was my dad's total champion, and she stood with him in everything that he did. They had an amazing relationship.
This is a picture of the Bost School several years ago. Actually, that building doesn't appear to be in use at the present time. They have a headquarters on
Oh, really?
South Zero and
Uh-huh.
units in 30 or 40 counties, growing probably. Um, do you happen to know anything about the current status of Bost? I've been out there several times and talked to them, but
There is a facility in Russellville where I live, And we've been trying to work out a time to get together. I have a large portrait of my father that I wanted to take. They are building an apartment building, and they want to put it in that. And so I hope to connect with them very soon.
Well, the Bost Center is um, everyone in Fort Smith knows about Bost and the Bost Center and so on. It is spread throughout the state as a place for children with disabilities, and I think that one of their largest services is just providing providing a place for employment and activity for people who have disabilities from 4 to 24 hours a day. So um, he said one time, let's see if I have it here. No, I'll get back to it. Um, uh,
I think in Fort Smith is where Daddy started his practice of gathering people that may not even realize that they were like-minded, and get them together to work on a common goal. And that is so exemplified in the Bow School, because all of these people have created this thing that is so magnificent, and it's not any one person. It is so many good people doing good things, and Daddy really believed that together people could do good things, and he just always tried to do that.
yeah, in 1959, well, he said that in 1959, from a tiny acorn of only 6 clients, a giant oak tree has grown, now serving at that time 700 consumers in 33 counties. Um, and then he also remembered the Junior Civic League, as I mentioned. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but that's an interesting comment, Virginia, about getting people to work together on things. I think this is my favorite picture of your dad. It's by George Fisher, who
Uh-huh.
was not nearly so kind to a number of the people that he portrayed in his cartoons. And many of you will remember George Fisher, who was at the Arkansas Gazette. Um, and I think this is just a wonderful portrait of Dr. Bost.
It
His,
is.
he
His
showed,
smile in that picture is just remarkable. It's so good. And his eyes.
yeah, yeah, I think so. In the lower left-hand quadrant is a picture, is a likeness of Dale Bumpers. Um, and Dale Bumpers and Roger Bost became friends during his years in Fort Smith because the Bumpers family lived in Charleston, not far away. And on one occasion, and I don't really know the details of this, but Dale and Betty had a daughter who required spinal surgery, I believe, and
She had a
through.
tumor. She had a tumor growing in her spine, and um, the suggested treatment was radiation, which would have left her paraplegic. And Daddy felt like there was this new surgery using a microscope, and he felt like there was just a chance that she might be able to walk. And she does still walk, and she's had children, and that connected them in a very deep way. He he knew of someone in Boston, and so he set that up for her.
Yeah. Oh, well, that was, it certainly was a major event in the lives of both families, I think. Um, it was it was around this time that, well, in 1965, I guess it was, that he moved to UAMS and joined the faculty at UAMS. Any further comments about growing up in Fort Smith, Virginia, before we move on to Little Rock?
We all loved Fort Smith. I just did not want, nobody wanted to leave. We just loved Fort Smith so much. But good things came in Little Rock. My two sisters and I met our husbands there, and we had a good life in Little Rock. But when Daddy went from practicing in Fort Smith, which he had a terrible collection rate in Fort Smith, and John Watts wouldn't join his practice until he got it a little bit better. But his salary was cut in half when we moved to Little Rock. And so we all had to adjust to that. But that's a doable thing. And I just think there were so many wonderful friendships in Fort Smith that it was just hard to move to Little Rock.
Tell us about your sibs, and your family.
Well, my oldest sibling is my brother Kingsley, who is a pediatrician in Poplar Bluff. And then I have two sisters that live in Little Rock, and we all have children, and everyone is doing very well. We have physicians, we have politicians, we have musicians, and people in film industry. My father was so proud of his grandchildren and now great grandchildren. He just reveled in the family as it grew, and loved his grandchildren.
Well, his role in Little Rock was far from limited to the UA Medical School, and things were in quite a state of flux in pediatrics at that time. There was the Arkansas Crippled Children's Hospital. The Arkansas Children's Hospital was coming along. He arrived at about a time when the patients were being transferred from UAMS to the Children's Hospital. And he oversaw all that transition. And then in about 1970, I think it may have been, Dale Bumpers, well, somewhere around there, Bumpers was elected governor and called on his old friend, Roger Bost, to help him at the State House. And particularly what they did was create what became the Department of Human Services, I think it may be called now. And he was head of that and getting it started. And it was during this time that the number of Bumpers and your dad had a number of legislative initiatives to one thing was to make use of Medicaid and Medicare funds, which were available for the state, sort of thing that we've learned about also in recent years, that the funds were available, and it was just a matter of claiming them. And so Dr. Bost promoted the use of those funds. And also state law was enacted to allow osteopaths to practice in a hospital. That was over the fierce opposition of the Arkansas Medical Society. And also to put children with disabilities into the schools in Arkansas. And one of his opponents in this was Mud Jones in Conway, who was pictured also by George Fisher. Mud Jones said, "For such a runt of a man, he's 90% backbone." So that was the origin of the saying about he was 90% backbone. But this was Mutt Jones?
So at that time, I was entering college, and so my parents had three of us in private schools, college, and my brother in medical school when my dad took this job. And again, his salary was cut in half. And so as a family, this was quite a difficult thing to try to figure out, but we managed. And Daddy had stepped into just a real tricky situation there. There had been the Faubus years and Winthrop Rockefeller, and the legislature was not an easy place to try to present an idea that was a new idea. And somehow he used his same idea of gathering people together that had diverse skill sets, that may not think they have anything in common, but pull them together for a common goal. And it became a place of great support for him. Um, and it was an amazing time that they grew to believe in him and listen to him when it had not been a real productive place before that. But he was reviled by many, many people. When my husband and I got married, there was a local newspaper that had our wedding in the newspaper at as evidence of my father doing some big social event, and how much of a pipsqueak my father was, and that was with us getting married. And at our wedding, we had 2 pots of mums in the front of the church. We did not have a big society event, but that was just a constant, lots and lots of support, but then lots of tension and difficulties trying to work through problems.
Well, one of the little stories from his Little Rock days had to do with Bill Clinton, who got sick the night before he was scheduled to announce his first race for governor in 1978. And so he called Dr. Bost, whom he knew by reputation. "I'm a pediatrician," Dr. Bost protested. "Okay," Clinton replied, but he needed somebody to heal him by morning. And so Dr. Bost prescribed something which may have been children's aspirin, but Clinton made his announcement the next day, and Hillary Clinton referred to Dr. Bost as Bill's pediatrician.
When Barbara, I hope I have this right, when Barbara Pryor flew into New York from Europe, she broke her femur or something really bad as she was getting off the plane. And so she was yelling at him, "Call my doctor, Dr. Bost." And, a pediatrician in Arkansas when she needed an orthopedist in New York. But he did take care of just a series of governors. And, those had been Democratic, but when Frank White became governor, he asked Daddy to stay and work with him. But at that point, Daddy really wanted to get back to UAMS. There were just things he felt were important to do there.
Well, let's see.
And I must say that Daddy would not be comfortable with my bragging about him. So apologies, Daddy. We're just talking about you.
Right. Okay. Got it. Well, he did return to UAMS and then retired from there. And I gather that retirement was kind of off and on thing. He may have had little spot jobs during that time.
He retired 3 times.
Oh, okay. Um, well, I'll have to tell my own little story about, I only met your dad one time. I think I probably have told you about this, but I made notes at the time, and so I would like to just share my notes from this. It was 2010. Um, uh, we were at a funeral. It was in North Little Rock or Little Rock, and so I wrote down, a lady standing nearby introduced herself as Catherine Bost, and her husband Roger was around and came over later. And he was very gracious. Oh, yes, I know you, Taylor. I've kept up with you. You were a breath of fresh air when you came to Fort Smith, you know. Uh, I just, I was, when I told that story to Larry Price, he just laughed because he knew that that was kind of way that your dad made friends. Um, anyway, so he told us about his practice in Fort Smith from 1955 to 65 before going to Little Rock, where he was head of pediatrics, etc. Um, and I said, he's 89 now, says he doesn't know why he's still around. He's rather small, partially bald, wore a semi-turtleneck shirt and tweed jacket. A few stories from Fort Smith days. He said that John Watts joined him in his practice, and when John called in the course of the conversation, Roger asked Catherine what John's wife's name was, and they thought it was some sort of precious stone. So he asked John, "How's Opal?" Well, it was really Garnet, and I think Garnet has told us that story too. Um, and
Mother thought it might be Pearl.
yeah, yeah. And when he first came, he said Prentice and Gladys Ware invited him to a party they were having, and Gladys took him around and introducing him to the others. Then he got to McLeod Seacard, who was president of the First National Bank, and McLeod Seacard said, "Pediatrics? Well, you'll sure be busy. Everybody's got a lot of foot problems around here." So those were stories of local interest, you might say. Um, let's see. Um, this was from Ernest Dumas, I think, who was. That's my little story. Oops. Oh dear.
I really appreciated what Mr. Dumas wrote at the time.
Yeah. This is Ernie Dumas from Ernie Dumas's comment in the Arkansas Times in 2013. A less imposing man would be hard to find. Frail, short, bespectacled, and bald at an early age, Roger Bost's um, mortal frame was outfitted with a voice so thin and reedy that he could barely be heard above the muted whispers in the legislative hearing rooms where he often spoke 40 years ago. But boy, did he get heard. No one in Arkansas ever did as much to lift the welfare of children, and not just children, but people of all ages who at some point have found themselves or loved ones outside the latitudes of first-rate health care or social services. That may include most of Arkansas. Um, so I agreed.
You know,
Virginia.
he had a thin, reedy voice, but he had a beautiful singing voice.
Ah,
He sang many, many solos, and it helped him get through college. Um, he would be paid to sing. So despite having a thin, reedy voice, he had a gorgeous tenor voice.
oh well, that's good to know. Um, Well, any other comments, Virginia, before we ask for comments and questions from the group?
When, um, when mother and dad were very elderly, I used to help them with their papers and things. Um, and I would see daddy's notes on this and that. And I remember looking at a sheet. He took notes from the first meeting. He gathered people together with the idea of car tie, and we talked about that. And he just had lots of ideas that he would gather people together, and he was involved likewise in the AHEC, which is now, I think, Arkansas Regional Medicals. I'm not sure what they call it now, but it's educational centers around the state to train physicians, nurses, and he really believed in that, keeping Arkansas medical students in Arkansas when they finish their training. Lots and lots and lots of things that that he did that people really aren't aware of. One of the things he got through the legislature was requiring children to have car seats, and little children. And it's hard to know when to stop on what he did.
Well, Virginia, thank you very much. I think it really has been invaluable to have your contributions on this. Suzanne, you want to take over and ask for?
Yes, I want to second that. This has been really wonderful hearing these firsthand accounts about Dr. Bost. It's really been great. And I loved your comment, Virginia, where you said that his philosophy was together people can do good things. I think that's wonderful.
He
So,
really believed that.
yeah, he really lived that for sure.
Mhm.
Let's see if anybody has any questions for Dr. Pruitt or Virginia. You can put them in the chat box. It looks like someone, Derek Redkin, made a comment that Dr. Bost was the recipient posthumously of the 2014 President's Award for the Lifetime of Outstanding Contributions to Medicine by the Pulaski County Medical Society, and that Dr. Joseph Bates was also a recipient that year.
Mhm.
So if anybody has any other questions, just put them in the box. I should mention while we're waiting for people to possibly type in their questions that the next presentation is going to be for Stay at Home is going to be April the 3rd, and Tim Nutt's going to be talking about the Kirby family of physicians from Harrison, Arkansas. Did you have something else you wanted to add, Virginia?
Well, I was just going to say, I mentioned Dad's illness back in 1953, but he was, uh, he did all that he did despite having a lot of health issues. He
Yeah.
had problems with his stomach just so much of the time, but he just kept on, and he would get up and go. And that that is not an easy thing to do.
He had a lot of fortitude.
He did.
I will share that one of the first oral history interviews that we did here in the Historical Research Center was with Dr. Bost, and there had been a terrible ice storm that night, and the crew that went out to interview him, he talked for 3 hours, and he was still ready. He was still going when they decided they had to go home. And it was just wonderful. I mean, you could sit through it and listen to that, and it was not like it was 3 hours. He had so many stories about everything, and you could really see that he had so much grit, you know. So he was a wonderful person.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'm not seeing any other questions here. So unless y'all have anything else you want to add, I think we'll sign up for today.
Okay, well, thank you, Suzanne and Virginia. Good to see you.
Good to
Bye-bye.
see you.
Thank y'all. And thank everyone else for joining us today. And hope that you all have a good afternoon. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.